parts of Lahaina that I could see looked like a bomb had gone off.
That's Shirley Enebrad. She and her husband owned a home in Lahaina, and a home that is no longer existing because of the fires on Maui. And she's going to be joining us shortly to talk more about what has happened and the conditions there. She's gone back to Lahaina to see what was left of her property. Also had an opportunity to talk to the locals there about the challenges that they are facing. Well, welcome everybody to Chino Y Chicano.
I'm Matt Chan, the Chino.
I'm Enrique Cerna, the Chicano. Well, Matt, this is an ongoing story. We first talked to Shirley not long after the fires happened, and this was in September when we talked to her. But this is a story that is also now because of the news cycle, you're not hearing
it.
Yeah, it's fading. You're not hearing about it as much. But what had happened there still is a deep concern, and as Shirley's going to tell us, people are still struggling.
Yeah, that's the criminality of media now, is that they don't follow stories, and the people there are still hurting, and their story deserves to be told. I mean, I'd rather see what's going on there and shine a light on that than have to listen to a 24/7 Trump diatribe.
Well, Shirley is a former Seattle news producer. I worked with her at Como, and she worked at several of the other stations. But she and her husband have had a home in Lahaina. She's worked there. She had an older daughter that is there, an adopted daughter. They also had concern about a tenant, and then she'll tell us and fill us in about that. So she has really had to deal with all of this and will continue to deal with it. And that's why we are talking to her to kind of find out where things are. And for those of you thinking you want to go to Maui, well, you might want to listen up here to understand what the challenges are there. So here now is our conversation with Shirley Enebrad. Shirley Enebrad, well, welcome back. We talked to you earlier, not too long after the fires happened in Maui. And at that time, you told us about a missing friend, a burned to the ground home that you had, and a daughter who had already been displaced as well. So you managed to go back. What did you find?
I wasn't able to see my house because our zone wasn't open yet. But the parts of Lahaina that I could see looked like a bomb had gone off. Everything was gray and ash and, burned out cars, just like what you see on the news. But it was so hard to see it from a personal viewpoint because I could see two different neighborhoods on either side of the highway that I lived in, and they were gone. There's just rubble. But
so what did you find out about a friend that had been missing?
Actually, it was our tenant. She died in our house.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And while I was there, I called Maui police and the FBI, and because I'd already messaged FEMA and the Red Cross and MPD, saying that we found out that she actually made it back to the house. One of the neighbors saw her, and they never responded. So I thought, well, while I'm here, I'm going to call. So I called MPD. They put me through to the FBI. I told them my story. They were very rude. And it was like, why are you bothering us kind of thing. And I said, look, the fires happened almost 2 months ago. We know she was at the house. Send somebody to our address to see if her remains are there, because I don't want to be the one to find them. Or I don't want one of my kids to be the ones to find it. So they gave me the runaround. I talked to like 6 different people. And 2 days later, they went to the daughter's house and said that they found her a week after the fire. But somebody dropped the ball and they let her suffer for 2 months. So, yeah, it was pretty.
Is that story sort of common, an experience around people?
Well, we have a saying on Maui, when things don't go well, that's so Maui. And I didn't think it would happen with a federal agency, like the FBI, for heaven's sakes. but it did. And I don't know how many other people were treated like that. They made an excuse saying that they sent her remains to a lab on the mainland. And then I think they just forgot about it. But she was the only one in that neighborhood that was listed as missing, and they knew her address. They should have found her right away, which they did, but then they just dropped the ball.
And she had a daughter that you knew was also living
Yeah.
there?
Her daughter lived in our house for 2.5 years. And while I was there, she had her baby, her first baby. So it was kind of heartbreaking for her, to not have her mom. But then she finally got the message that they had found her mom's remains. And I think it was like 9 pounds of bones is all that was left.
Oh my gosh. And then what about your daughter? You had an older daughter that was also there, and then another adopted daughter you said that took care of the place?
Yeah, Danielle just 2 days ago moved to the North Shore of Oahu, and she's going to stay there until we rebuild our house. And then my other daughter, Bri, has been living at the Westin Maui on Ka'anapali Beach. And she just found out 2 days ago that they're kicking out all of the displaced people on November 29th. They have no place to go. She's like, Mom, I don't, do I pitch a tent somewhere? Because she works in Kapalua, so she really needs to be on the west side because she has a son. And if she has to commute, she has the place she was staying at before is a possibility, but it's in Makawao. And so, she gets off work between midnight and 2 a.m, and then she has to drive an hour and a half. It just doesn't work. So it's pretty sad because all of these people that they have been taking care of are like, okay, you're out of here.
So what is she going to do?
She doesn't know yet. She's still working on it. I mean, if push comes to shove, she'll have to commute from Makawao, from her friend's house. But that's a long commute, especially when you're tired at night.
When we last spoke, it was there was a humanitarian crisis. I mean, there were a lot of people displaced, had nowhere to go because they didn't have family and friends or people to take them in. And of course, the news cycle, it's not in vogue right now, right, to talk about the fire and all that stuff. That's old news. But for the people that live there, it is very present. What's the situation now? I mean, what's the mental mindset? How are people living? What's it like?
People are angry. They are so angry, especially now that the word is out that they're going to be displaced again and with no place to go. I mean, it's like, okay, now what do we do? So they're not very happy about the way things aren't being handled. And when I was there was a lot of tension already because there was no clear leader telling them what was going to happen or, if they had any options. And that still remains to this day. Everybody's really pissed off at the mayor, and he hides. Nobody's seen him for months.
So it's just every man for themselves.
Exactly, and that's not right.
No. Okay, so at the resort, I mean, is the resort providing this free of charge to the government, or is the government subsidizing these units? I mean, because at some point it's a fiscal decision, right? And so the government, I mean, I can't see that the hotel, I mean, they're just kind of the provider here. But at some point, did the government just say, look, we don't have the money anymore, we're kicking everybody out? I mean, that seems pretty cold-hearted.
They're telling them that they have to go because they have to make room for tourists, because they want tourism back. But the resorts are getting paid from the government. They're being paid
that's what I would think.
From FEMA. And so they're not losing any money. So that's why everybody's angry, because it doesn't make any sense that they're going to kick them out so that they can bring in outsiders who shouldn't be coming anyway, and then leaving these people high and dry. I mean, there's people right now that are camping on the beaches, and Bryce said, I can't do that. I can't bring my son and go live on a beach and try to work in Kapalua. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And it's happening to so many people. So that's why there's so much anger, because not only is there not good leadership, but they don't get told things in a timely manner. The only reason she found out was because she went to ask a question the other day at the Red Cross, and somebody there mentioned it, and she was like, "What?" So we're not even, they don't even get 2 weeks notice, and they're going to be homeless again.
Wow. How old's their
So
son?
he's 12.
Wow. So I guess who is supposed to be in charge here?
Yeah.
The state?
Nobody knows. That's the crazy part.
The federal government. So who's
Well,
on first? Who's on second? Who's on third? What's the
that's
deal?
the frustration. I called my friend Ellie Cochran. She's the state rep for the Lahaina side of the island, and she can't get answers. There was that talk about the governor earmarking a bunch of money for businesses that were affected by the fires. I asked her about that, and she said it hasn't happened. Nobody knows how to apply. Nobody knows who's going to distribute the funds. And so it's all just talk. They say stuff and then nobody follows through, and nobody knows. I mean, here she is a state rep and she doesn't know what the heck's going on.
Yeah.
So she's as frustrated as everybody else because her house burned down too.
They want the tourists to come back. Yeah. But if everything's in disarray, what are they going to do? I mean, the tourists will show up and then they'll start getting pissed off because they don't have the services or the aloha kind of experience, right? And let's face it, Maui, it's going to be mainly white people and they're going to be entitled. And, and you see some of the ads already saying, "Oh, come back, as we're welcoming you." And it's like, I can't imagine that they've pulled it together enough to be able to support these people.
There's still areas that don't have drinkable water. It's crazy. It's crazy that they're trying to rush this through. And that's coming from the governor down. And it makes no sense. I mean, they can say people can go to Kihei, or South Maui. They can go to Hana, but the people in Hana don't want them either because they're housing displaced relatives. So it's kind of nuts. And a lot of the activities that used to be on the west side, they're gone. Yeah. 15 restaurants in downtown Lahaina burned. So trying to get into a restaurant north of the burn zone, which is all that's left, it's going to be rough.
Well, and then people trying to get groceries and things like that. I mean, it's just daily life is so difficult for the people there already. Can you imagine a tourist coming in looking for a bag of Doritos?
Well, so what do the locals want?
They don't want tourists. Now, it's hard, though, because some people whose houses didn't burn that aren't getting any aid want to go back to work. So they're on that side. And then the people that are still suffering, who don't have a home, don't know what their future is going to be like. The last thing they want to do is wait on some entitled tourist who is, give me this right now. It's not going to happen. And it's going to get ugly. And it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be mostly white people. So then there's going to be a whole race element to it, because there's no aloha right now. I mean, these people are just trying to survive.
Why isn't there larger thinkers there saying, okay, this is a huge reset button, right? What do we do moving forward? But it just seems like they can't even get out. They can't even push the reset button.
That's exactly right. It's funny. I mean, there's no industry on the island. So that's why it was, built around tourism to begin with. And when they rebuild Lahaina Town, they're not going to let people build on the water side of Front Street. They're going to get, eminent domain, and they'll get money, but they won't be able to rebuild.
And why is that? Why not?
Well, because of the climate change, and they're expecting. My house is probably going to be waterfront 20 years from now, and we're half a block from the beach. So they had changed the zoning already, but all those old buildings were grandfathered in because they've been there for 100 years or more. So now that they have that opportunity, they're not going to let anybody build on the ocean. So nobody's in charge. Nobody knows what's going on. Everybody's kind of left wondering. And then that's how rumors start running rampant about people, the government taking your property and stuff. And it's just ripe for that, because nobody knows who to trust, or who to believe in. And they sure in the heck don't trust the government right now, because they're not getting any aid. I mean, when you look at what happened after Katrina and places like that, where they actually, FEMA came in and built little houses for people to live in the meantime, didn't happen. Didn't happen on Maui.
So what happens now with your property? We know, we've seen the pictures of it. It's pretty much burned to the ground for the most part. Where are you at? And what kind of interactions have you had with insurance companies on this?
Well, we had to hire our own insurance adjuster to deal with the insurance company's adjuster because they were trying to screw us. So we hired this company. I never even heard of these people before. So we hired them, and they took over all of the stress. I just had to fill out a bunch of forms when I was on Maui, and I met with the guy that's managing our claim. And they have some kind of formula where they figure out how much it's going to cost to rebuild. And he submitted that, oh gosh, about a week and a half ago. And I haven't heard anything yet, but the report that he submitted was that it would cost us $2 million to rebuild our house.
Whoa.
So they're not going to be too happy. And I think a lot of the smaller insurance companies will probably end up going under, and people are going to get screwed again. But the biggest issue is not for people that have insurance. There are so many people that don't have insurance. They either inherited the property, that was multi-generational, or like my next door neighbor, he paid his house off 5 years ago and then got rid of the homeowners because it wasn't required by his mortgage company. So he doesn't have any money to rebuild now. And that's going to be a big problem for a lot of people. And then what's going to happen is they're going to be forced to sell their property because they can't afford to rebuild. And then that rumor is going to become, that prophecy is going to become true, or look like it's true, because only people with money are going to be able to afford to buy their property.
So the disaster gentrification.
Yeah, it's going to be a mess. And there is a group that's trying to put together like an organization to buy people's property from them and then let them build their house on it, and so they can stay there, but they don't own the property.
Yeah,
sort of a land trust thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's interesting.
That would be very interesting.
That actually would be that would be helpful. The thing of something unique happening there too.
Well, and it's something that needs to happen, because I don't even know what percentage, but I'll be curious to find out what percentage of people can't afford to rebuild because they didn't have homeowners.
So what are you going to do?
Rebuild. It's going to take 3 to 5 years, supposedly, for our house. And who knows where they came up with that. And then they're saying that it's going to take 12 to 15 years to rebuild Lahaina town itself.
So why do you want to rebuild?
Because it's a great investment property, as long as we have the right insurance.
Yeah.
So my husband's first degree was in architecture before he became a psychologist. So he's already working on plans, and it's not going to be the exact house. And so we're going to build that, and then we're going to build a little ohana in the backyard for Danielle, so she doesn't have to live with the tenants.
What's the mental health state? I know that's one thing when you went back, you were going to be focusing on and trying to help people deal with the kind of the grieving that would no doubt be happening from not only loss of property, but the loss of life.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And a lot of the cultures there don't believe in counseling. So, they're just suffering. And unfortunately, they don't believe in it for themselves or their kids. So that's an issue. All of the schools are required to have a counselor on property for the kids. But a lot of people, especially like the Filipinos, they don't believe in it. So they don't push it, and they don't sign their kids up for that kind of thing. I did some grief work while I was there, but people were still in shock. So I said I would come back the first week of January, and I'm going to offer a series of workshops to deal with people in groups. Because I think sometimes they're they don't want one-on-one because they feel like they're being analyzed, which, grief is not a mental illness. It's a condition of what happened to you. But so sometimes it's easier to do it in a group setting and then sort of try to sell it as an educational experience rather than mental health.
Yeah. So after all of this, has there been a final kind of death toll of, because I know when we spoke last time, you said that one of the victim pools, so to speak, that was undercounted were children. Have they accounted for everybody now?
No, and they never will. No, and they never will. The official number is 100 deaths confirmed. There's still supposedly only 4 people missing, but the unofficial record is several hundred people still missing, like 300.
How does that happen?
Well, I actually figured that out while I was there. There's a lot of people that are there illegally. They're from Micronesia, Tonga, Samoa, Mexico, whatever. And those are the folks that are afraid to report because then they're worried about being deported. They're also the same group of people that are afraid to ask for government funding, for relief, like FEMA and stuff, because they don't have the proper paperwork. So that just adds a whole nother element to it, but it makes sense now why there was eyewitnesses to quite a few deaths that weren't counted.
Do you think that there are things in place or needed to be put in place to guard against, I guess, people that would come in and look to take property and kind of do it badly and kind of screw people over? Is there a concern about that, or is there enough awareness now to make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, pretty soon after the fires happened, there was the rumor that people were going to come in and, carpetbaggers and try to just screw people that were not in their right mind because they were grieving or whatever. But the governor put something in place, like a moratorium or something. And so people are pretty aware. Plus, there's the, all the rumors about their property being taken from them. So most people are pretty guarded, even if they don't have to be, because of those rumors. So I don't know anybody on my side of the island that has been approached. I have heard of one person in Kula that was approached, but in Kula, those are like farms, farms and ranches and stuff. So there's a lot of property around them. But I've only heard of one person, and that was like Coconut Wireless. That was like somebody told somebody that told me.
Coconut Wireless. I'd never heard of that before.
So where are the people that have no place to live? I mean, you say they're living on the beach, but are there still sort of encampments that were set up for them? I mean, kind of communities?
All those were torn down. They were all, I don't know if they're going to pitch new tents or, so that at the War Memorial Stadium or whatever, but I don't know where these thousands of people are going to go on the 29th, I mean, I feel like because my daughter, if push comes to shove, would just have to commute farther, but at least she would have a roof over her head, but there's a lot of people that don't have that. Like 3 different friends of mine moved just last week to Las Vegas. Another friend moved to Oregon, 2 to Washington, and a bunch came to California. And these are people that actually had houses. So their idea is that they're just going to stay on the mainland until their house gets rebuilt. But that's years. And, but not just Maui.
So for people that didn't lose their home, that are just living there in the area, what's it like for them every day? I mean, is it just a struggle just to go get groceries? Do they have power outages? I mean, what's it like?
Well, it gets windy and it triggers their PTSD, or they smell smoke, and it could be somebody's barbecuing on the beach, but it freaks them out. So it's pretty rough. And the people that were renters, that don't have to look forward to getting their house rebuilt, most of them, if they had ties to the mainland, had to go to the mainland, or because there's just no place for them to live. And, half the jobs are gone on that side of the island. So the ones that could stay moved to other parts of Maui, or like Danielle moved to Oahu. So quite a few moved to the Big Island, but there's just not much in the way of support for those people. Group housing, and put them in took away all of the emergency housing that was group housing, and put them in the resorts. And now the resorts are saying, okay, see ya. So I just don't know what's going to happen. It makes me sick to think that they're being treated this way.
So you're an old newsie, and knowing how the news is cyclical as far as goes from one disaster to the other. You guys were hot news literally in August, and then September, October. Yeah. And now not so much. I mean, I have seen some stories like in the New York Times and a few other places. But since you're out of the cycle and out of that, constant microscope, isn't that only makes things that much tougher in trying to get recovery, doesn't it?
It does. Well, also, when they kept talking about reopening Maui, that made people that aren't there think, oh, it must be okay now. And so all the donations started drying up, So in the government, especially the governor, his effort to try to bring people back for the tourism dollars, it made people erroneously think that there wasn't an issue. I mean, they don't go around telling people there's no drinkable water here, And my daughter said even at the resort, they supposedly have their own filtration system. She said her skin has been affected by showering at the resort. So what's going to happen when they bring these tourists back in and they start having rashes and stuff because the water isn't clean? I don't know. It just makes no sense to me.
People there want to tell the mainland about coming there, supporting them. I mean, what do they want?
To wait on people, or I can't speak for everybody. I mean, like I said, there are people that want tourism back, and the others that don't, because it hasn't been long enough. It's not something that you can just brush off when your whole town and your job and everything you owned is gone and you have no idea what you're going to do next. You just can't use your energy to wait on people or to, even interact with people, because there's so many people that think, oh, it's almost like you're in the zoo and they think it's okay to ask you, did your house burn? Did anybody in your family die? You can't go around asking people that without expecting some kind of backlash. One of the resorts, the Westin Nanea, I know the general manager, and it's basically a timeshare resort, so they couldn't tell people not to come. Owners had to be allowed to come. He sent out 3 letters to each reservation telling them not to ask his employees about their experience. He said, you may think that you're trying to be supportive, whatever. The curiosity is not for your knowledge. It's personal. Please don't ask them anything about what happened. And he felt the need to send it 3 times. Whereas my friend who works at the Marriott, she had a guest that was asking the front desk clerk, did your house burn? Did you lose anybody? And this gal, was trying to be polite, but she didn't want to answer that. So my friend ran out from her office and said, hey, that's not appropriate. You cannot ask people about. And the woman said, well, I was just trying to be, concerned. And she said, no, you're being curious and there's a difference. You can't. You can't expect people to answer that. So you're going to get the wrong person. You ask that question, you're going to get the wrong person with a really bad response.
No. What's your word to the public out there?
I want people to know that it's a beautiful island and it's a great place to go on vacation. But right now it's people's lives that you're affecting if you go there and you don't go for the right reasons. I mean, some people have come and volunteered, which is awesome, but there's, that's not the majority. And if you do go, don't expect immediate service. Don't expect the restaurants to have the same menu from when you were there 5 years ago or 2 years ago, because they had to cut down the menus and what they offer because they don't have enough supplies or enough employees. So it's going to take longer. And especially if you decide to stay on the west side, there's still some great restaurants there, but there's so many that aren't, that takes a lot. It's going to take a lot of time to get a reservation. So do it in advance and be kind and don't be nosy.
And be patient.
Yeah.
Hey,
Patience,
Shirley.
patience for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have a lot of patience here as you go through the whole rebuilding process. Hey, thank you so much for sharing with us. And let's stay in touch and follow up on this as I guess the months go by, and we'll see how things are going. Well,
thanks for not letting the issue die like everybody else has done.
Well,
Okay,
that's
thank
why
you
we're
so
here.
much.
Shirley
Okay,
Enebrad.
guys.
All right, Shirley,
care.
thank you so much. Take care, and I hope things go well.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
The Chino Y Chicano podcast is available on your favorite podcast provider.
You can watch the video version on YouTube, and Converge Media, a leading producer of culturally relevant content in the Pacific Northwest. We'll talk more later.